Clara shook her head, her eyes filled with sheer panic.
There's a ghost in the office, sir. It attacked me.
Her voice broke and her trembling hands clutched her neck, where the vivid marks from strangulation were still visible. Her words silenced Uncle Marcus. A ghost? He thought, struggling to believe what he'd just heard. He had worked as a security guard here for years and had never encountered anything remotely supernatural. Yet the scene before him suggested a chilling reality. He swept the beam of his flashlight around the darkened hallway, scanning every corner, but there was no one else. Nothing unusual. "There's no one else here, Clara," he reassured her, though his tone lacked conviction. "You might have just imagined it."
No, it's real, sir,
Clara cried out, her voice trembling with desperation.
I saw it.
It appeared behind me, its cold hands. It was choking me. She gripped his arm tightly, her eyes wide with fear. Her words sent an invisible shiver down Uncle Marcus's spine. Though he'd never believed in ghosts, an unsettling unease had plagued him throughout this shift. Watching Clara's terrified expression, he couldn't shake the feeling that something horrifying was indeed unfolding within the building, something he couldn't comprehend. "All right, stay calm. I'll check everything, and then we'll leave together," he said firmly, masking his own apprehension. But deep down, he knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary night shift. Every step forward seemed heavier, weighed down by the creeping dread emanating from the shadows. Clara's panic still lingered, her trembling gaze fixed on him. Suddenly, her expression changed as if she'd remembered something. Between gasps, she stammered, "Sir, Lauren. Miss Lauren is still on the 4th floor. She's up there." "Lauren." Uncle Marcus furrowed his brows, a wave of concern washing over him. Lauren, another staff member, had indeed stayed late to finish some work. "You're saying she's still upstairs?" "Yes." Clara nodded, her voice quivering. "She went to grab something from the office on the 4th floor, but then I heard her scream. I didn't dare go up. I was too scared." Her words sent alarm bells ringing in Uncle Marcus's mind. Something was definitely wrong. Despite his own fear, he knew he couldn't ignore the situation. "We need to check on her," he said, his voice firm but tinged with unease. Clara hesitantly nodded and followed close behind him. The elevator stood eerily silent and inactive, forcing them to take the stairs. As they climbed higher, the air grew heavier and more suffocating, as if an invisible force was pressing down on them. The flashlight in Uncle Marcus's hand flickered faintly against the walls, its beam feeble and dim, as though the darkness itself was devouring the light. When they finally reached the 4th floor, a sudden ice chill enveloped them, so cold it seemed to cut through their skin. "Miss Lauren," Clara called out softly. But there was no reply. The hallway was unnervingly quiet, as though the space had been abandoned for years. The windows were sealed shut, separating them from the outside world, and the flickering ceiling lights cast weak, unreliable glows. At the end of the corridor was Lauren's office, but before they could approach it, the door to the adjacent meeting room creaked open on its own. A dim, flickering light spilled out, weak like a dying candle flame. Uncle Marcus's heart pounded against his chest as an ominous feeling swept over him. There's something wrong there, sir," Clara stammered, pointing a trembling finger at the partially open door. Without exchanging another word, the two of them cautiously approached, each step echoing hollowly in the oppressive silence. When they were just a few steps from the door, Uncle Marcus's flashlight beam passed through the narrow gap, and he froze instantly. In the dim light, something caused his breath to hitch in his chest. a chilling sensation creeping from his spine to the top of his head. Inside the room, under the sickly yellow glow of fluorescent lights, they saw Lauren, but the sight before them left both of them petrified. Lauren sat at the conference table, her body rigid, frozen as if trapped in time. Her eyes were wide open, empty, staring into an infinite void. The most horrifying detail was her mouth. It was stretched unnaturally wide. Her upper and lower jaws appeared to have been broken and wrenched apart by some unseen force, exposing every tooth and gum. Dried blood clung to the corners of her mouth, adding to the grotesque scene. Clara screamed, her piercing cry echoing through the oppressive silence, shattering the suffocating tension. Her trembling hands clutched her face as if trying to block out the terrifying vision. But she couldn't escape it. Uncle Marcus staggered back, his eyes wide with terror, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. His entire body stiffened, paralyzed by the monstrous reality before him. Lauren's corpse sat there, her pale, stiffened skin and grotesquely contorted jaw, creating a horror far beyond any natural death Uncle Marcus had ever witnessed. A sense of helplessness enveloped him, like a suffocating darkness, as both Clara and Uncle Marcus stood frozen, staring at Lauren's lifeless form. The horror wasn't just in the blood or gore, but in the cold, silent despair that lingered in the air, an invisible yet paralyzing force that numbed their souls. That nightmarish image etched itself into their minds, an indelible scar they would carry forever.
We have to call the police,
Clara stammered, her shaking hands fumbling to pull her phone from her pocket. Her fingers trembled so violently that she could barely press the buttons. But eventually, she managed to dial 113. Her heart pounded as she brought the phone to her ear, waiting anxiously. But instead of a response, only cold, repetitive beeping echoed from the other end. "No, this can't be," she exclaimed in desperation, frantically redialing, only to be met with the same eerie silence. "Uncle Marcus, there's no signal. We can't reach anyone." Her voice cracked with panic, her eyes brimming with tears of fright. The lack of connection felt like a death sentence, a chilling confirmation that no help would come. A cold dread ran down her spine as she felt the world around her closing in, plunging her into a suffocating darkness of hopelessness. Uncle Marcus pulled out his own phone and tried to make a call, but the result was the same. No signal, no connection. He stared at the screen, his heart sinking with each passing moment. This was no ordinary situation. Something sinister and invisible was controlling this building, something neither he nor Clara could comprehend. The most terrifying realization was that they were completely isolated, with no way to call for help. "Stay calm. We have to stay calm," Uncle Marcus said, forcing his voice to remain steady to reassure Clara, though his own hands trembled slightly. His gaze lingered on Lauren's grotesque body, but he knew they couldn't stay here a moment longer. "We need to get out of here, right now." Clara could only nod, her face pale, her wide, panicked eyes darting around. Her breathing quickened in short, shallow gasps as the fear clawed at her. As the two turned to rush back down the stairs, an unexpected sound echoed from above. It wasn't footsteps or the creak of a door. It was a faint, eerie noise, like metal scraping across the floor, interspersed with indistinct whispers. Soft yet ominous, the sound was unmistakably coming from above. Both of them froze. Uncle Marcus furrowed his brows, doubt and apprehension clouding his expression. He had no intention of going upstairs, not after what they had just seen. But the sound, like a chilling invitation, repeated itself, compelling him in an unnerving way. It wasn't mere curiosity. It felt like an inexplicable pull, a compulsion he couldn't ignore. Could it be Tyler, the IT guy? Uncle Marcus murmured, trying to keep his voice steady, but betraying his growing fear. He mentioned earlier he'd be working late because of system issues. Maybe he's still up there. Clara looked at him, her lips pressed tightly together, unable to speak. Both knew something was horribly wrong, but what other choice did they have? Despite the dread gnawing at his insides, Uncle Marcus reminded himself of his duty as the building's security guard. We should check. He might need help. The words made sense, but the atmosphere screamed otherwise. As they ascended the stairs, each step felt heavier than the last. The peculiar sound from above grew louder, more distinct, an eerie combination of scraping and faint whispers, as though something unnatural was waiting for them in the darkness.